And before I get going here, I'd like to thank Miss Grace for encouraging me to do another one of these chapels. The last time was probably in 2008, so thank you very much for the encouragement. So, I have spent the last 17 years during various school breaks conducting field research on folkloric rhythms from influential drumming traditions in their places of origin, always bringing back rhythmic transcriptions and procuring authentic instruments for Campbell Hall. Here is a speedy trip of these places. Buckle your seatbelts. Thank you. Fastest airplane ride you've ever been on. So, thank you. The map pen stopped on Zimbabwe for a reason, because that was my most recent trip, and sort of the theme of today's presentation. So I was there to study their national instrument, the Mbira, which you'll learn about shortly, and here is a clip of some of those lessons from the master teachers.
Chamunorwa. Friday, Chamunorwa. Master Mbira player.
So there's a few bullet points here about the Mbira. It was actually featured on a Google Doodle. That's when Google changes their logo to something important in the world. The instrument's over 2,000 years old, and it does play sacred music used for ceremony and healing. And here's one more clip, one of them that I found to be more interesting.
My name is Alois, and I'm playing a song called Nyamaropa.
Very nice. And what does that Nyamaropa mean?
Nyamaropa means where there's blood, there's meat.
Kind of intense, huh? And they do still hunt, which you'll see an interesting creature that they still hunt. And along the way, I met these really cool kids from this nonprofit called Humwe, which in Shona, one of the indigenous languages of Zimbabwe, means togetherness, or as one. And we got to jam together many times, and I was learning from them, which was a nice change of pace as a teacher to learn from students, which actually happens here more often than you would think. Ask any of you teachers. And also, I did a little post on my socials and was able to raise $1,000 for them, which is probably like the equivalent of $15,000 for us. This song, speaking of learning from them, I thought this clip was appropriate. It's called Kuzanga, which means to show or to teach. And here is just a abridged clip of our little jam session. Check out the young boys playing the shakers. They got more groove than a lot of professional musicians I know. This is Kuzanga, which means to show or to teach. just a little clip. And yeah, that's Humwe. And so while I was there, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, I do procure instruments on these trips. This is a couple of the builders here.
And so how long have you been making Mbira for?
Myself,
Yes.
for a long time, since 1996.
96, okay. Yeah, that is a while. And what is your son's name?
Soba.
Soba?
Yes.
S-O-B-A?
Salobby.
S-A-O-B.
Salon.
Salon
Salobi.
Yeah.
Okay, do you mind saying hello to my students on camera? How old are you?
I'm 25 years.
Okay, 25, so you're not a kid anymore. Great, well, we appreciate all of your hard work. I know the students will really enjoy playing the instruments.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much, really appreciate everything.
Okay.
Thank you for helping.
Okay.
And so they actually did make it back to Los Angeles. As you could imagine, I was a little nervous about that. And I never bought so much packing foam before in my life. And so that's actually the 7th grade world drumming helping me unpack the instruments. And at some point they will learn how to play them, but we're working on another song right now. And just a quick shout out to the maintenance crew for always being so helpful to make our classrooms beautiful. Look how nicely the instruments are displayed in the classroom. Our unsung heroes many times. So, look, for the places I go to study, the music is almost inseparable from their heritage and identity. So, once the locals find out that I'm there to study their music, I get an all-access pass of sorts to an insider's experience of their culture and tradition. And after a while, they start to look after me like I'm family. So there I am, staying amongst the people, with the people, doing what they do in their daily lives, as opposed to your typical vacation at the nicest hotel you can find, only seeing things that are recommended in Lonely Planet Guide. Don't get me wrong, I like to do those trips also. So this most recent immersion in Zimbabwe is almost I'm going to use it as an anecdotal to share some of these takeaways of all of these places I traveled to, because there's a bigger story than the Mbira or Zimbabwe. And this is really what I want to share with you today. So just some of my observations, and you should make your own observations. They don't have to agree with mine. So I did find the standard of living is very different in almost all of these places I've been to that you saw on the Google map earlier. I was taking bucket showers, electricity was limited, and you really learn to slow down and be mindful in almost a forced way when you're waiting for your hot water to heat up on a fire every day for almost a month. Or you could take a cold shower. Also, they reuse everything. It's almost the embodiment of reduce and reuse, whereas for us, if something breaks, it's usually easier to throw it away and buy something new. And the infrastructure's most of the time not as great here, so we might complain about some potholes, but that's the norm there. And in most places I study, and it also kind of helps you slow down and not be in such a rush. Although I'm sure they would appreciate improved roads. Also, just common things we take for granted. I thought this was interesting. Okay, this is where the dishes dry.
Yeah.
They are washed below. You can see the chickens eating the scraps. And they dry on top, like this. Pretty good drying rack, if you ask me.
Zero electricity. That's solar power right there. And laundry. My takeaway is I complain when I have to go to the laundry and take my clothes out of the automatic washing machine and put them in the dryer, but maybe not anymore. And the kitchen, the most spiritual place for this particular culture. The
tell us about everything here?
Okay,
That's
so
Matilda.
we have our stove here for cooking. And the blocks here, you can actually build them. That's preventing the wind from blowing the fire. Yes. So we have our dish shelf. That's where we put our plates, the cups. And we have these clay pots. We actually designed them in our kitchens. In case we have a traditional ceremony, we can also use all these clay pots for the traditional beer.
Okay.
Yes. We have our pots here. And this is kind of modern. Yeah, but that's all about it. And ladies in the kitchen, they sit on their side. And men sit on the bench, you can see.
Ah,
Yeah, so
interesting.
that's how we do it.
Why is that?
That's the traditional way. We
Maybe-
don't have to mix men and women.
Okay.
Yes.
I just thought that was interesting. More of a patriarchal setup that they choose. Something to think about. Food, I found all of the food is pretty much farm to table, where here you pay extra for that. And only seasonal foods, because there's less importing, which is more sustainable, believe it or not. And some interesting traditions with how you eat.
We eat with our hands, so this is a tradition.
Yeah.
Having your hands washed.
Very good.
You feel like a king? Thank you.
Okay, you may have the dish towel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's 5-star.
Yeah.
Hilton, right? Wash your hands.
No.
Okay.
He wouldn't let me return the favor to wash his hands because I was a guest. What if we start doing that at the student store here during lunch? Could be a fun tradition. Here's a traditional meal. I ate this almost every day, and at first I didn't like it, now I crave it. Sort of like the first time I tried sushi. This one I am not craving, but I had to try it. And what do you think of this? Speaking of hunting.
How do the mice taste?
Just nice. And the proteins, they are there and originally as they are.
He was my buddy and he drove me around when I needed a ride. We're gonna fast forward here, just a little clip of the street scene. So the people I was with, they would shout out the window, hey, we need some oranges and this and that, and they just bring it to the window as you're driving through the traffic jam, which was pretty convenient. We should do that on the 405, maybe. They'll even put a goat in your trunk, if that's what you're having for dinner. Here's some of my friends who I keep in touch with on WhatsApp. This is my driver in the middle, you saw him earlier. A really good driver. And you'll notice something's missing there. And he told me about it. He said, you know what, you gotta make best with your circumstances. This guy had every reason to not be optimistic, but he was. And a really good driver. And because I had this all access pass as like an insider as a musician, they invited me to the funeral of this 103-year-old lady. And as you can see, there's even drumming at the funeral service. So I had lots of takeaways. You can read this. And I challenge you to think of your takeaways, comparing and contrasting, and maybe seeing what we can learn from other cultures, because we're not always the ones to teach developing countries the best way to do things. We can learn from them also. And just to end on something fun here, I'm at my 15-minute mark. I thought this was a fun little magical moment of my trip. So a little quote to end on. I did have a piece to play, but we're out of time and we're going to actually sing a song together. But a little quote here to think about. And also, if you have any questions, you can come find me, email me. I'll be happy to hang out if you want to try the instrument at some point. So, Mr. Bonhiver, are you ready to do the song, or how does this work?
Prayers first. Do prayers first.
Oh, prayers first, sorry. Thanks for having me. It's actually from a folkloric song in Guinea, which was one of the places I traveled to, and we played djembe music from there in world drumming. And this is just a beautiful song, and I always wanted to do it in chapel, and since it's from one of the places I've traveled. And also, by the way, if you don't know Harry Belafonte, he's 95 years old, a living legend. He was one of the main funders for Martin Luther King's tours of equal rights speeches in the 1950s. And also, he has a song that you probably know without even realizing, the Banana Boat song, also known as Deo, which is in the Beetlejuice movie. So, and the song we're about to play, that Bonhiver learned this morning, because he's so cool, was actually featured in one of the episodes of The Muppets. So maybe you want to look that up later, but it's a really fun song, and I think it fits the theme of everything today.
All right, everyone, let's give a hand for Bruns. It was a beautiful presentation. I really thought it was amazing. Thank you for sharing that, all that with you. With us, sorry. All that with us. It was beautiful. All right, so this is called Turn the World Around. All right. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. Try it. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life.